In our previous slide that showed us the relationship of the project lifecycle and phases to processes and process groups, the phases were laid out like the boxes on the bottom of here. So we started out perhaps with a couple of phases to kick off the project, to start the project. So this really maps onto my boxes up on top to the conceptual design, getting the project started. And then they had phases to organize the work, and that really maps onto also planning phases, maybe the end of conceptual design and detailed design to get everything all organized. And then we had carrying out the work that really maps on to the development phases or execution phases. And then we have ending the project, maps on to perhaps the testing phases, integrated testing, and closing everything out. So this is a traditional project lifecycle. This is waterfall or sequential. We're getting all the initial planning all done, getting everything all organized before we move into execution. This is also called predictive planning. So do intense planning, do all the planning up front, get everything locked down, all the I's dotted, all the T's crossed, the blueprints squared away, all the approvals on those plans before you start construction. This is classic traditional waterfall or predictive planning. In version 6, PMI gives us 5 different ways that we might handle the project lifecycle or approaches to setting up the project lifecycle. The first approach is what we've been talking about in a couple of previous slides. Do things in a waterfall way or a sequential way. Do predictive planning. The second approach is to do things iteratively, to figure it out as you go along, kind of play it by ear, progressively elaborate, build out your plans as you move into later iterations or later stages of the project. In the early stages of the project, we'll only have high-level estimates of time and cost. We'll only have a high-level description of the product we're creating or the service we're creating. As we move into later phases, we'll build those out in more depth. We'll go into more detail. Therefore, we will get better estimates of time and cost as we move through the project. We will be progressively elaborating. This is an iterative approach. One important type of an iterative lifecycle approach is rolling wave planning. So I think this is priority 1. I think there's a high chance you're going to see rolling wave planning on the test. So pay attention here. In rolling wave planning, for things occurring soon, things occurring in the near future, we'll plan them in depth. For things occurring farther out, we'll sketch in the plans at a high level, but we'll wait until we approach the time we're going to need those aspects of the project or those parts of the project to fill in the details as we move along. So as an example, so now we're going to do more than kitchen remodeling. We're going to do a lot more remodeling in the house. We're going to update the kitchen, but we're also going to update the upstairs master bath. And we've got to fix up the basement too. We got to have a place for these grandchildren to go play so they can get out of our hair and not create so much noise. So we're going to do 3 parts. This project's going to have 3 main parts: updating the kitchen, the upstairs master bath, and the downstairs basement. So for the key stakeholder on this project, what's the #1 priority of those 3 parts? What's the #1 priority? Oh, it's the kitchen, of course. She wants the kitchen updated first. So we're going to plan in detail updating the kitchen. Our WBS for the kitchen, we're going to go down pretty deep into that WBS, down to level 5, maybe even deeper for all the kitchen remodeling. Then for the second priority, the upstairs master bath, at the beginning of the project, we'll just sketch in at a high level the first levels of the WBS, maybe level 1, level 2, level 3 perhaps, of the upstairs master bath. We're not going to do the upstairs master bath for another 6 months, so we can wait to put in more details. We'll wait for about 4 months, 4.5 months, to start filling in more details in the WBS for the upstairs master bath. At the beginning of this project for the basement, again, we just sketch in a lot of just sketchy details for the basement, level 1, level 2 of the WBS, and we might not get started on the basement for another 9 months or a year, so we'll wait 8 months. 7.5, 8 months to start filling in details in the WBS for the basement. We'll wait until we approach the time we need that to fill in all those details. This is rolling wave planning. Plan in waves. Plan in 2, 3, or more waves for your plans. This is one type of progressive elaboration. It's one type of iterative planning. Another version of an iterative life cycle is incremental. So this is just another flavor of iterative. We're dividing the project up into iterations, but as we move from iteration to iteration, we're adding on additional scope requirements or just building out more functionality in each new iteration. Okay, the next life cycle approach to talk about is adaptive or agile life cycles. And these agile life cycles are both iterative and also incremental. So we are dividing the project up into iterations, but as we move from iteration to iteration, we will be incrementally adding on new functionality, new requirements, but we're actually even going farther than that. We could make wholesale changes in the functionality as we move from iteration to iteration. At the end of an iteration, we're going to do a review meeting in Agile. We're going to show the key stakeholders, the product owner, other senior managers, what we've created in that iteration, and they may discover, they may realize that what we created really doesn't meet their business need at all. So back to the drawing board, swap that out, replace it with some other approach, try something else. So in adaptive, there's a lot more change as we're moving from iteration to iteration. We're discovering, we're exploring requirements as we move from iteration to iteration in Agile. So more about that in just a few slides. The last lifecycle approach is hybrid. In hybrid, it's just what it sounds like here. This is a mix. This is a blend of the other lifecycle approaches. So part of the project we can do with a predictive approach. Most projects, when you think about it, or many projects, when you think about it, are complex enough, are large enough that parts of the project or work packages in the project, we've done that type of thing many, many times before. They are cookie cutter. We've got very good historical records from previous projects that we can use to get very accurate estimates of time and costs. So use those. It can be acceptable to move forward with a predictive approach, plan everything out in depth up front for those parts of the project. Other parts of the project might require a lot more creativity. There's a premium on creativity. We need to explore, we need to discover requirements. So we're going to use an adaptive life cycle or an agile life cycle for those parts.